still on side ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. To the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
Bad ideas, good stories. Number 2. That's it.
How's the levels? Seems like everything's okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, number 2.
Yeah.
I'm Dusty. You're Pat.
And Pat, you're Dusty?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Very excited about doing this. I've been kind of looking forward to it all week. So,
yeah, it's been interesting. We got some good feedback, so I'm liking what we're doing. I'm liking where we're going with it. Yeah.
Yes.
Got some feedback about our beautiful lighting and my haircut. I got a COVID cut. My girlfriend did it for me. It's pretty nice. It's nice, B. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. What else can you say? You're stuck together.
Yeah, and we're living together. Yeah, we're in close proximity. Yeah, it's a little shorter than I was expecting, but who's going to see this really? Who's going to see my hair really?
This is shorter than I was expecting. Shorter than I was expecting. It's a lot more transparent than I was expecting. A lot more, barren than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the benefits to quarantine. Like we said, there was a few comments since the last one, so we're going to try and improve on, I'll try to keep my hands to myself and not slap the table so much and make it look as pleasant as we possibly can.
I don't know. I'm up in the air about, I need to be casual. I need to have a conversation how I normally have a conversation. And if my hand touches my face, I really don't give a fuck. If I use my wrists when I talk too much and it's femmy, I don't give a shit. That's a damn problem.
And
not
it is.
Me
That's the femmiest of
it. It is. Growing up, I was told by lots of people, don't act like that, don't stand like that, don't talk like that, don't do this, do this, right? And it wasn't good for me. And now I just fuck it. This is how it's funny, I was working at the strip club one time, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at this camera, and I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? And he's got the hip cocked to one side, the hand on the hip, the whole 9, and I'm like, that's me. And it was the security camera from behind me.
That's so
I had
funny.
No clue. I was
this ass?
this thick guy with the most funny way of standing ever. Yeah, that was me.
A little thick and juicy.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a similar occurrence. I had my nephew out at my place, and I had him on the back of my pedal bike, and we were ripping around the yard. My brother was shooting video of it, and he's like, "Here, check this out." And I catch it partway through, and I'm like, who's that old guy on my bike? I'm like, oh man, that's me from behind? That's what I look like?
Oh,
that's unfortunate.
I don't know if you've ever made a sex tape, but there's no real secrets when you're reviewing that stuff.
Nice segue.
There you go, for sure. It's just that's me. Oh, I don't need to see that. So, face for radio right here, face for radio.
Got a penis for radio.
One of my dancer friends from Winnipeg, she's like, I woke up and I saw this guy's sex tape. I bet I could find it. Some R&B singer guy, and apparently all of his stuff is just how he lays it down. He's the slickest motherfucker in town. He's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, and his sex tape was not what it was supposed to be. Both girth, length, and performance apparently was very lackluster, and there's a lot of women right now that are really unimpressed with that.
More laughs than they were expecting.
Yeah.
Is this a comedy?
If you go on Twitter, you're going to find... I can probably look it up real quick here. You can't find the sex tape because it was taken down really quickly, but the comments are definitely worth it in their own because... what is it? The Kevin Gates sex tape. If you look up Kevin Gates sex tape... Oh, yeah, exactly. I don't know the R&B rap kind of dudes, but I listen to one of his songs, and it's all about how he can dick people down, like a pro. Like a pro.
Dick people down
yeah.
Pro.
And apparently...
That's going to be on throw pillows everywhere soon, hey? Welcome, Matt. Look into my home. Hope you can dick people down.
Oh, he's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's going to be like this. And then the videotape came out, and man, there's women like, this is me watching the tape. And they're just like, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad. That's why I hope none of mine get out there, other than the ones that are already out there. And then yeah. Anyways.
Mm-hmm.
They've been well edited, so you can't recognize all of this.
Yeah, right.
All of this.
Yeah, there's bits and pieces. Yeah. I can build the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that, about 5.5 inches. Solid love.
Jesus.
Hottest 30 seconds of her life.
What? Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
I thought this was a safety net.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is
Feel
a safety
safe.
net.
I have no
This isn't
comment.
going any further than us, right?
You're not going to get more than me. Yeah. What else do I want to talk about with you? I'm kind of excited about having some future guests as well.
Yeah,
so again, if anyone wants to give us helpful tips, we're in Saskatoon. This is something we didn't really mention too much in the last meeting. We're in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. So
if you go to Canada, we're in the middle of nowhere. I've lived in the middle of nowhere my whole
Paris
life.
of the prairies we are.
Pimple on the prairies.
Oh, come on
Yeah,
now.
if you look at Canada and you put your finger dead center, we're a little to the left.
Yep.
And we've got about 5-hour drive of flat lands before the next largest metropolis, Edmonton. There's Regina, it's 2.5 hours away, but it's 5-hour drive to Edmonton. Like a 6-7 hour drive to Calgary? And those growing up were like the two biggest spots I could go to get records, to get magazines, to get music, to get anything that wasn't in Saskatoon. So I'd like to say that we were very much like a landlocked island, especially before the internet. So there was this weird environment growing up in Saskatoon of the only information we had on what was going on outside of our city came from Thrasher magazine, the lyric liner notes of like punk rock albums, tattoo magazines that you had to buy in the porn section of magazine stores or porn stores because they wouldn't put them in straight. So all of this culture was very much this weird little like what we could filter from the outside world. You know what I mean? The internet opened things up a lot, but there's something about Saskatoon. It's like this weird mecca of like really talented individuals, like musicians and artists, cooks, all these people that are really, really exemplary individuals, that have done some amazing work just because they had nothing better to do. Oh, I guess Saskatchewan, we're under snow half the year. So there's that. You like snowboard. I got nothing. I shovel snow as often.
Just hide out.
As often as I have
Igloo
to.
up.
Igloo up, yeah.
No, I totally. I think it's totally a gem. Yeah, man. It's because we're kind of a hub for everybody who like still wants to live in a place that's pretty gnarly for at least half the year. Like, because I think there's something about people that like any one of us can move. You know what I mean? We don't have to live here like this. Like we can go anywhere like and not like just struggle to survive. Even if you're doing well, like just you get a flat. You get a flat in January. You're like, is this the one? Is this the end of the line?
This is where I die.
Yeah, finally. Flat tire finally got me. I knew it was going to get me eventually. So I think there's something about that. If you want to stay here and nobody else wants to, so they don't want to come here, you got to do a lot of things yourself. You know what I mean? You got to make a lot of your own scene and your own fun. And I think that's great because then when you get a bunch of people who did that in all these different small communities where it was them and 1 or 2 or 3 buddies who were trying to make their own little thing, then they get to a place like this. So that's what happened for me. I get to see all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, there's 15 people in a room who are all into this? You know what I mean? I was used to 2 or 3. This is fantastic.
And those people that are into it are right into it.
Yeah, well, right. yeah, exactly. And it was funny you're talking about how you guys were, it was such a drive to get to some place. I had to literally get in a time machine to catch up, though. Like, it was the same time. Oh, man, like from Carrot River, which is where I grew up, about 3.5 hours northeast of Saskatoon, it was about 25 years difference.
Really?
Man, because it's like, I would, No Effects would play in Saskatoon, I'd find out 6 months later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool, that'd have been great to know, But,
well, I remember
time machine.
It used to be that Saskatoon or Saskatchewan across the board was about 5 to 10 years behind the culture of Vancouver of Toronto. Like what was happening in Vancouver or Toronto would kind of filter to Saskatoon about 5-6 years later, punk rock, all of that stuff. But the internet changed the game. The internet really changed the game because in an instant we have access to everything, like when the counterculture becomes mainstream. Really, is there a counterculture when it's easily accessible? When the flashlight shines on the
sold
underground?
over-the-counter culture.
An over-the-counter, under-the-counter, exactly. Well, I mentioned that in my notes here, that like, back in the day, like stuff like tattooing and punk rock and motorcycle culture and kink and, all the spooky, goth culture, it was underground. It was underground in the big cities, let alone in the small cities. And to find that stuff, you kind of had to venture into some shady territory in order to access it. And now we live in an era where we can just put a hashtag and look up whatever the hell we want. You want to find out the fetish club in your city, you just look it up on the internet. You don't need to have a password from somebody in the know and you go down a dark alley and knock, what's the password, come on in. Same thing with tattooing. you used to have to kind of be a rebel to go into a tattoo shop. You had to be walking on the wild side. You don't know what you're going to run into when you walk in there. It could be bikers, it could be prostitutes, it could be God knows what.
Could be prostitute bikers.
Prostituting bikers.
Any angle.
It's like, how much do you have? What do you really want?
A fullback?
Oh man, I was like drawing pictures of skulls in my science class when I'm 15, and I take the bus down to, so that's 30 years ago, right? So I take the bus down to the hood where there's this like biker tattoo shop, and I walk in with my skull drawings, and I have a safety pin through my ear, and they're giving me shit. They're like, you're gonna get an infection, and I'm like, oh no, it's just a safety pin, it's all good. And I'd sell my art to these guys, you know, for $10 a shot, $10 or $15 a shot. I'm sure they were doing like, here, selling it for $100 and keeping the rest of it, but whatever, you know. And it was scary as hell for a little punk rocker skateboarder guy to go into these biker shops and to try to get a leg in. But then what ended up happening, and this is tattoo culture at least, those old bikers ran the scene for a long time. Outlaws ran the scene. And then there was weird little skateboarding, punk rock, heavy metal guys like me and my buddies that weren't really as scared of those biker guys, so we would go into those environments. But then when we learned to tattoo, well, the artists weren't scared of the punk rockers and the skateboarders. You know what I mean?
You guys are a little more accessible.
100%. So all of a sudden, like, this edgy art people started getting involved, and then the next generation, nobody's afraid of just an edgy artist. They want to be like the edgy artist. So counterculture becomes popular culture, and it's really weird to watch that evolution. Where now, on the internet, oh, you got thousands and thousands of tattooers, and they're bouncing ideas, and they're so talented, but they've lost touch with the underground roots of where it came from. You know, and it's the same thing, I guess, with, you know, like the punk scene, or with the kink scene, or, you know, the motorcycle scene. How edgy is a Harley Davidson logo now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, get you run into town previously. Eh?
Yeah, right. It meant something.
Yeah, well, even mentioning the punk scene. Like, I know going to shows back in the day. Like, if anybody went to like the original Jazz Basement, your first time was a kind of terrifying experience, because you go there, you're like, oh, it's a jazz club. Sometimes you're like, okay, it's gonna be cool, and then you get in there and you're like, wait, it's in this building. Oh, I gotta go down where? You know, like, only how much of it's lit? You know, like, and it was gnarly. Like,
there's no separation between the band and the crowd.
Yes, right. The first time you experience that, and you're just like, wait, what? This doesn't make any sense. But it's also like super exciting because you're part of it. Then, right? It's something you don't get at a big stadium show or even at a bar a lot of times, because there's still a little stage. You're on the same level as everybody, and a place like that was cool too, because there was lots of bands that got to be big deals later that would come through there because that's where they could play. And if you're lucky enough, you're like, geez, I could like be sweat on by these guys before they got cool.
Or get some of their DNA.
Without even that being the reason, you know, you don't know, you just show up there.
I didn't have to get backstage.
Actually, the reason, that's a band I saw there that got famous after they played there, and I mean, it was on their trajectory, but they ended up doing some songs with Tegan and Sarah, and I've seen them live before they got big. They were really like real punk rock energy, whereas they got a little more artistic, I think, with their music later, but still excellent stuff. But yeah, that was when I always thought of when I'd seen them on Much Music, like a couple months later. I'm like, what? Those dudes, like.
That's a weird thing about the punk scene, at least that I found, is that it's intimate, it's real, because you're playing in a gig, I'm playing in a gig, we're buddies, and we're in the crowd watching our buddies' bands. Like, we're the fans actually doing it, the do-it-yourself aspect. When the whole arena rock star, literally the rock star attitude is so anti-punk. It's the antithesis of punk. It's the opposite, where you know, I think that's a problem for me, that I grew up where the bands that I liked were my buddies, and you go see somebody that you think is a rock star, and they're just like your buddies. Hey, you're a guy that knows how to play guitar. My brother's a guy that knows how to play guitar. Hey, you've played this concert. My brother plays concerts, or I've played concerts. You know, we played the Winnipeg Hardcore Fest with Mastodon, and we were hanging out with Mastodon, and you know, oh shit, did one of those go out? Anyways, well, we're playing gigs with Mastodon. I smoked the one guy down in the van, and he's like, hey man, let me buy a few of those. And I'm like, okay, here's a few joints, right? And then he's like, cool, I'll get you after our set. And so we play our set, and I'm like, okay, where is that guy? He's the guy with all the tattoos, and I'm looking for him. He sees me, he's like, whoop, and he fucks off, right? And that guy still owes me $15.
Joins you free, my friend.
Yeah, interest, motherfucker,
Yeah.
Interest. But
What hippie party do you think this is?
or you know, there's been a few bands like that. Agnostic Front stayed here. You know, they played at Amigos there, and then they were coming through town. And this is a band that, you know, they play festivals with like 50,000 people. And well, all of a sudden they come to town, their gear broke down, and their hotel fell out from under them. And the promoter's like, "Hey man, you got a place to stay for them?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've been listening to these guys since I was 14 years old. They're the reason I got into tattooing." So I'm sitting here, and Vinny Stigma's petting my dog. You got some nice dogs here, you know. I'm like, yeah, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But you never expect like Metallica or I don't know, any other like arena rock band to do that.
And you know what's crazy is like you're not the only person who has that story about Agnostic Front.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't a one-time thing where
No,
they
it
were
was
like,
just-
oh, we just fucked up and it just. But no, like, no, but like not to downplay. No, what I mean is the beauty of that is that's happened other times. Other people have had that experience because that's that scene.
Is this recording still? Hold on a second. Oh, it says it's full. Okay, looks like that guy is the recording one. Do you want to pause this for a second?
Yeah, we can take a minute.
See what I can do.
Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah, I like that's funny actually.
All right, you good? All right. So yeah, like Agnostic Front stayed at my house, and you were saying that some other bands had done similar, or you
Oh, yeah,
stayed at other
absolutely.
people's places.
Oh well, both. Yeah, we were on tour, man. Yeah, if somebody had a couch, it was definitely doing that instead of staying in a motel.
Mm-hmm.
And but no, there was this one Austrian band, Rent to Kill, who were awesome. And they ended up living at our house for like 3 days just because they didn't have any place to go for a bit. So we're like, okay. But I'd come home from work and they'd still be there in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, what are these guys taking off? Plus, like every flat surface in the house had something or someone on it. There was legit a dude standing on top of a kitchen chair using the top of this stand-up deep freeze we had as a place to keep his laptop so he could fucking work on it, you know? It was like,
touring bands, they do whatever they can do,
Yeah.
wherever they can do it.
but it was fun.
You have all your stuff
Little
with you?
adventures. Oh yeah, no, they were cool,
some
man.
of those
Yeah.
guys are cool.
No, they were cool. Straight up, we go to Austria. I got a place to stay, so I just
Oh,
got to
that's
get
neat.
to Austria, I guess. Make them follow through on that. And actually, we played with the UK subs one time, and which was cool because I got to meet Charlie Harper and hang for a minute. And I'm like, that dude's gonna die in a minute now if he hasn't already. R.I.P. I hope not. But he's like a legend. And their drummer ended up coming staying at our place and doing magic tricks all night down in the basement. We're in our jam spot.
That's cool.
And then, just because we're talking drummers, I remember one time, this band, the Rebel Spell, I can't remember who they were touring with, but both the drummers in the bands were hooking up. So they were staying at our place, but they had this dog, and the dog shit everywhere while they were there. And they're banging in the spare room, and we're like, hey, your dog is shitting all over the place. You got to do something about this. And then they just kind of fucking left it, and I get stuck
Thanks.
with all this dog shit.
I
So
appreciate that.
other than that, they were cool. But I
Mhm.
mean, yeah.
I've dated a
Takes
couple
all kinds,
people
I
that
guess.
shouldn't have had pets. You know, you go into a place and there's nothing but like bongs and needles and pit bull shit
Jesus
everywhere.
Christ.
Oh yeah, grimy stuff. I'm
Bongs
like,
and
come on,
needles
you
and
really?
pit bull shit.
Yeah, should you have a pet? Should you have a pet? But yeah, I remember when those guys stayed here. He's like, oh, I really appreciate no playing drums while we have
I
a
know,
mic
I
on
keep my
here.
hands to myself.
I really appreciate you guys putting us up here. If you ever make it to the States, you can come to my tattoo shop. You tattoo at my tattoo shop. And I'm like, New York Hardcore Tattoos. I'm like, yeah, I'm banned from your country.
Be a lot cooler if I could.
Yes, thanks Harper. You know, thanks Obama. You guys made some great fucking plans. You know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Screwing with your dreams. One day.
no, I don't know. It's like banned in DC. There's a million other places to go. You
Yeah.
know. Never go to New Orleans. Never go to LA. Never go to New York. I wanted to go to these places. Never go to Vegas again. I am most disappointed that punk rock bowling really picked up after I got banned from the USA. Because exactly, you
Yep.
can go down there and chill with these people you grew up like idolizing. They're right there, you know. Hey, there's Lee Ving. Hey, don't kick me in the face, please. You know?
I played poker with Smelly from NoFX.
Okay, well there you go. Exactly, because
Where does that happen?
punk rock scene. In the
Exactly.
punk rock scene, that shit happens because these people are not separate from you. They're the exact same as you. And I always wanted to go down there, but it's not in the cards right yet. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe there'll be some sort of paradigm change down there where, you know, they don't have AR-15s and, you know, militarized police at every border crossing, you know. For some
They loosen up the loopholes a little bit so you can squeeze through.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, I'm not a criminal. I don't know what you think, but sometimes, you know, government intelligence is an oxymoron. So, yeah.
Getting political.
Well, I'm getting political. You're about to get political, Pat. Watch out. You got some opinions.
No, I was
on
just getting
things.
ready for it. To strap in, or strap on, whatever's more
Strap
appropriate
on
at the
to
moment.
politics.
Yeah.
Get some comedy, is like some Crisco.
Mm-hmm.
Strap on the politics. Anyways. What do you got? What do you want to talk about?
I didn't really have too much, honestly. I was kind of busy all last week, like just doing things that weren't that interesting, I felt like, but I just kept busy the whole time.
Social distancing things.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's been fun. What else? Well, there was a couple little segments I thought might be fun to do. Like, I was thinking about like this "we're not experts" angle, because I feel like there's enough things that like we have experience with that. Yeah, I like this look. That if a person had never done them, you didn't have any idea. This might be some things to avoid fucking up your first experience.
We're not experts, but sometimes the experts are fucking morons.
Yeah.
This bugs me. Okay.
Okay. Here we go.
Here we go. We live in a college town. My entire life, in the punk scene coming up, I've dealt with experts, people with education, people with the letters behind their names that have like a lot of opinions and no experience, and it bugs the fuck out of me. As opposed to somebody who's got a ton of experience and no letters behind his name somehow is less valid. Now, I've been tattooing 28 years, so 28 years I've been dealing with customer service. I got in a debate with a close friend of mine who has a degree in business or took some classes in business, who starts trying to tell me how to do customer service. And I'm like, I've just been doing this most of my life. More than half of my life I've been dealing with the public. I know if a person's coming around a business tire kicking and they're not really going to buy. Well, actually, I learned that I'm an expert, and that fucking bugs me. It bugs me.
Well, you guys are probably coming from slightly different areas too, because yours is still through the artist's view. You're still going like, even if they want to buy, maybe I don't want to fucking deal with them. Whereas if you're someone who's like, no, I went to school to study business, this is the way you do business. Well, no, it's better if you're in a suit than a t-shirt. It's better if you speak eloquently than if you're rough, you know what I mean? Because it's more broad and it's more acceptable. But if that's not what you're doing,
or that's not your product.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not your product. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really tough one, because I know, because I've been dealing, tattooing, you mark somebody for the rest of their life. You're dealing with a pretty serious product, for lack of a better term. And luckily, because it's an old outlaw culture, you can be rough around the edges. That's part of the process. I'd like to think that's part of the experience that people pay for. They're walking on the wild side. So if you drop an F-bomb around them, or you say cunt in front of them, they're like, oh, how edgy, right? But at the same time, you don't want to scare them away. You don't want to be smelling like booze and weed when they come in, at least not in our shop. And you have a professional behavior. Now, I also know when people are serious, they're talking about getting something on them for the rest of their life. So you have to take it serious. And I know when people start saying, oh, hey, I want an infinity sign, but my next one's going to be this, and then the next one, and then when I get to my back piece, and you don't really encourage them talking about everything from that point on. One thing at a time. Let's just dial that back and bring it back here. And this person's like, well, no, you need to listen to them forever. You need to just like entertain them and lead them on. I'm like, no, you kind of need to guide them towards a conclusion here. And this is my experience after doing this over half my life, that you just guide them towards where they should be, the conversation that's meant to have. You don't entertain all of their wants and needs for the next 20 tattoos they want when you want to talk about the one being done right now. But that was it. They had all this theoretical expert knowledge because they'd read about it without experiencing any of it. And you put them in the environment of actually having to do customer service, talking to somebody, as opposed to writing an essay about how you should talk to somebody, and they drop the ball. So, I don't know. We're not experts, but sometimes we know our shit.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was thinking about was, since we both have some,
this
is fine. But just like it is springtime, people are gonna be getting out on their motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And we both enjoy riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, if a person, I was lucky enough, honestly, my old man was always into bikes. So, like, when I wanted to be, at least there was that.
He was around.
I could, like, well, how do you do this? Or, something to just help you with the first couple of steps. So if you don't know anybody that's already into bikes, or
are you talking about wrenching or riding?
I'm riding. Just you want to get into motorcycles. You want to get a bike. You never had a bike. You know what I mean? So what I would say is, again, I'm no expert, but I'd say if you guys want to get into motorbikes, do those things first off. Try and be around other people that are into motorbikes. Talk to people about bikes. Get magazines on motorcycles. Become interested in them. Because I found with myself, it's probably a lot like tattooing. You have a vision of what you think you want, and then you get there in reality, and you go, well, this doesn't work, or isn't going to function the way I need it to. Like somebody comes in with, oh, I want to put this, and I want to put it here, and it's like, well, dude, it's not going to work. It's going to look ridiculous. It's just, I have to make this fit better. Same thing, I think, with motorcycles. When I first started riding, I had this vision of like, I wanted a long bike, 70s style, I want a Frisco tank, I want a jockey shift, I want
all
no
the
front
fucking
brake,
suicide machines.
Yes, I want the gnarliest, right? And And then you ride something like that, and you're like, okay, cool. I don't know. I want to be scared every single time I get on this. I want to fight and work every single time. So I think my thing would be is like just get on a bike. You know, if you can get on a dirt bike, you can get on a sport bike, you can get on a cruiser, get on something where your feet can touch the ground, right?
I want a bodysuit before I have a tattoo.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the
This is what
mentality
it
I had
feels
though.
like? Yeah.
And especially as soon as I rode a bike once, and I was like, okay, I can do this. You know, and it's like, well, no, ride a bunch of different ones, especially if you can before buying one, because I know a lot of people like to buy a bike and then, well, it's mine and I can practice, and it's like, you know what? If you get into it, you're going to run into other people that have got bikes, and they're going to let you take their dirt bike for a rip, and then all of a sudden, you don't have to go and buy one, but you got really comfortable on two wheels and running a clutch, you know, and on something that's a little bit more dramatic to ride than a regular street bike. Right?
Oh fuck! As opposed to a jockey shift, suicide, you know,
right?
No front brake, all that shit. You know, I get it. There's a culture of choppers that comes from like a place where it's warm, where the roads are like maintained meticulously. There's toll roads to maintain this stuff. And they don't live where there's gravel on the ground. Well, when there's snow half the year, a gravel a quarter of the year, and potholes as deep as your front wheel. Like that necessitates a different type of riding style, you know, at least in my opinion. And as much as I love the look and the nostalgia and the style of like the California rigids, you know, and all of that stuff, when you get out on a Saskatchewan highway, it's a bit different, you know, and you get on Saskatchewan streets, it's a bit different because this isn't fucking California, you know what I mean? And as much as I love the rigid choppers, my back isn't going to handle it anymore. Same thing with my cafe racer, right? We went on a 4-hour run with that cafe racer. I'm down in it, you know, like my shoulders, my triceps. My girlfriend thinks she's going to fucking like fly off my back like a backpack without straps if I brake too hard. Right. But the other thing is that without front brake thing and the jockey shift and all of that stuff, yeah, it's badass, but those things are called suicide machines for a reason. They will fucking kill you, you know? And like, you should probably learn on training wheels before you get into a sport bike, you know? Like, so I think that's a valid thing.
I still recommend choppers, and you should take your front brake off. But like, build up to it. Don't have to be the first one. Because it's cool.
Because it's cool. It's dangerous.
Because the bars look good when they're clean.
I recommend unprotected sex. Yeah, it feels better.
Yeah, exactly. Keep people from lame sex. Yeah.
See, and that's just it. If you want to gamble with your safety, if you want to gamble with your life, make sure that you know what you're doing before you get there. And that's my big thing is all the people that just want the crazy bikes and they haven't ridden before, and then next thing you know, or sport bikes is another one. You know, I just tattooed a guy with like an 1100 sport bike. And this guy, he's like, yeah, 300 kilometers an hour, no problem. I was telling him a story, you know, 300 kilometers an hour, no problem. I do that all the time. I'm like, fuck, that's insane, man. But then you hear about the kid who buys, you know, like a 600 sport bike, gets it off the lot and smashes it in because it's so powerful. He just wobbles right off the bat, and that's his first bike, right? So yeah, don't be that guy.
Try not to. Yeah.
But that on the other side, you know, there's a lot of people out there. Oh, this reminds me, the Redwood Original, Sons of Anarchy. People seem to think that I have a problem with like outlaw culture, which I don't. And you know, I don't have a problem with outlaw culture. I have a problem with poser culture. You know, I have a problem with poser culture. I saw on fucking Wish, you can buy entirely pre-patched vests and pants to look like a crust punk. And it's everything from Crass to My Chemical Romance on the fucking pants. You know,
cover your
like,
bases.
No, you know, Bjork or some shit like that. And you buy them pre-made. You know, it's the same thing with the Sons of Anarchy thing. It's like this show came out, like Miami Ink or Ink Master. These shows come out and suddenly everybody instantly wants a Harley, a Dyna. Has to be a Dyna with T-bars and fairing. That's necessary, 2-into-1 pipes. Yeah. And they need a bodysuit of tattoos and they need all this stuff. Well, what happened to just being you and finding this stuff organically, right? It's like a poser culture, a cuck culture. Have you heard this term?
Yeah, I've
heard cuck culture? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar with the term cuckolding, it's a fetish where a man usually likes to watch his partner be with other men. That's it. You like to watch as opposed to participating. And I think we live in a cuck culture right now. People that want to watch MMA instead of train or fight MMA. People that want to watch football instead of getting out there and playing football. People that want to watch and buy T-shirts that have a Sons of Anarchy logo on them instead of going out and riding. And I discourage people from being cucks. There's a whole wide world out there. Go do it. Or if you want to cuck and that's your thing, fucking A, you know, just own it. You know, I'm a cuck. Come hump my wife.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. I make cupcakes or cupcakes, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can't disagree with that. It's pretty valid. people, it's I don't mind the T-shirt if you got the story with it. You
Well,
know what
right.
I mean? Like,
That's the thing, you know.
I went to Vanderlei Silva's gym when I was in Vegas one time, so I got a T-shirt from Vanderlei Silva's gym while I was there. You know, and I'm not saying it's worth more than if you bought it off the internet, but at least when somebody's like, "Hey, you ever been there?" I go, "Yeah."
Is it an American
I
Fighter
have.
shirt from the mall?
Yeah, exactly.
American Fighter.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
those fucking shirts.
I was there. So
fight
yeah, that's the
UFC.
fun of T-shirts. I feel a lot of times is like, why else have something painted on your stomach if you don't want to kind of show it off? Like, hey, this is what I'm kind of about. You know what I mean? This is what I'm sort of here for. You know?
I guess. Well, you know, there's the artist Robert Crumb, and he's an eccentric guy. Like, his stuff is pretty gray, politically incorrect, from the 60s counterculture. He did like that whole hippie, you know, drug culture kind of thing. And R. Crumb, now he's kind of a bit of a recluse. He's still an artist, but he's at a tea house, and he's like, I don't understand this generation. And everybody, they walk around with like, I don't know, advertisements splashed all over them. And I'm like, oh my God. And ever since I saw that, I've been thinking about it. It's like, yeah, everything's advertising something. I'm advertising a logo. I'm advertising a business. I'm advertising a brand. That one gets me more than anything else. It's like, why do you have allegiance to this brand? You're spending more money to do advertising for Nike, Adidas, whatever it is, right? Because you want to advertise this company that's making money off of selling you advertising. It's really, really strange. Now,
well, and if you say it like that, right? Like if you remove yourself, like somebody who grew up 50 years ago when that wasn't the case, right? And then they just all of a sudden pop in and it'd be like, that's the weirdest dystopian thing you can do, right? Like everybody was like, oh, there's going to be advertising on the walls, there's going to be advertising in your mind, and it's like, no, I don't remember it being like, yeah, you're going to wear it around too while you're at it. You know, it was usually like future jumpsuits, but it wasn't like sponsored by.
have you seen Idiocracy?
Oh yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite movies. The guys, like, all of their outfits look like NASCAR, you know? They're all covered with brands, and that's it, you know? And like, I saw a guy on our local buy and sell for Saskatoon, and I don't know this brand. My brother says it's Supreme. It's like, I thought it was a hip-hop brand, right? Graham's like, no, they were like a make-all brand that got picked up because hip-hop guys were kind of picking it up. This guy was selling a used Supreme headband for $70. Who the fuck is gonna buy that? And then like,
what size was it though?
well, shit, you know, I got all kinds of used stuff in my bedroom. You want to buy that? You know, like, I'll give you a good deal on it. But it's collector. It's collector. It's got my sweat on it. That's what really my essence of man. That's what really bugs me. Like, where the fucking why is there value in a used headband because it has some like brand on it? And I guess that's the punk rocker in me coming out. I just don't get it. Hip hop culture, it really leaves me blind in a lot of ways.
Well, and it's funny you say that too, because I think a lot of people, if they looked at our vests, they go, "Isn't that what you guys are doing? You got all the patches all over. Isn't that what you're doing?" And you're like,
absolutely.
But you're like, yeah, but I got a story for every one of these too.
Shit.
There's a reason I picked this. It wasn't put on me.
I was thinking about that. I'm like the least zen I know. I am far. I'm like, is there such thing as a maximalist as opposed to a minimalist? Because
Full tilt all the time.
oh man, you can dig, and like everything on this wall's got a story behind it. Every tattoo I have has a story behind it. Every patch on my vest has a story behind it. You know, and I got bad memory, so I think it's kind of handy to.
Oh, bad memory. I forgot I went to Niagara Falls.
Period.
Straight up. I was watching a documentary one time, and I'm like, man, that's cool. I was like,
familiar.
shit, I've been there. I've been there. Yeah, I think that's something you'd remember, but
Well, there's lots of things I forget.
it was a busy week.
People I forget when I should remember. And it's like, oh hey, this is my wife. I'm like, nice to meet you. She's like, we've met like 3-4 times. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I'm bad for that as well.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I did a lot of damage to myself in my late 20s. Like, I like to think I have legitimate brain injury. I don't like to think. I think that I have legitimate brain injury.
Here's hoping.
Here's open, so I have a reason.
Oh, God, there's a reason for this, right?
Yeah, I tried to convince my ex-girlfriend to let me break out the video camera because I've got an injury, and like otherwise she's being oppressive against my mental health, and but she wouldn't let me.
Yeah, didn't want to fix your.
But I found one was cool.
Fix your brain injury with some banging.
Yeah, well, I need to remember it. Did it even happen if I don't remember? A tree fall in the forest?
Actually, that reminds you that I think our mutual friend Savage Henry.
Yeah.
I think he's got that Brazilian brain worm that you get when you're around cats too much.
That's what did it.
He's got all the symptoms, man. He's got every single one of them.
What are they?
It's pick one. Pick one of the problems with him, and it's a symptom of this brain worm. So I'm not saying he does definitely have it, but I think it craves Lucky Lager if he does.
Oh yeah,
You know what I
well,
mean?
they got that thing in the Amazon, the worm that crawls in the end of your pecker. So I wouldn't put it past him if he's ever been south of
Yeah.
South America that it came out. And then
I feel like he would have tried it just to see.
I think yeah, exactly. How does this feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he might be coming on. I think we talked to him and he's good to go. I don't know how that one was.
Yeah.
You think I'm
Well, he
politically
just
incorrect?
said I'm
Holy
good
fuck.
to go. I said, well, you don't even know what I'm talking about yet. He said, I don't care. I'm good to go.
So if anybody's interested, look up Savage Henry.
Yeah,
Savage
Savage and was 1 pounders for sure.
He's on YouTube. He's got a few videos. Classic hit Sluts. That's a big
Unreal.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know some people that have played in that band. They tend to get there's protests when they play. There's some band. There's some staff that they boycott. They won't work when they play. Fuck, you gotta love a band with the guts to do that. You do.
You gotta really push some buttons to make that
Well,
sort of
right,
stuff happen,
that
right?
when you're politically incorrect, that venues are blacklisting you, that the staff won't work, then you kind of have something I'm interested in hearing. I may not agree.
And I feel
but-
like most of it is based in love. Like it's physical love, like the physical expression.
One
of love.
expression of what could
But
be
it's-
defined
but
as
it's,
love.
it's love based, you know.
Well, right now, okay, this is another edgy thing to talk about. Antifa, right? So I listen to all kinds of music. I listen to like extreme metal, and there's this band, actually a genre, black metal. They're extreme metal, and these guys are angry. They're furious at the world. They want to set it all on fire. That's kind of their whole trip, and a lot of them play with fascist imagery. Some of them actually cross the line, and some of them are, racist or fascist. But a lot of them like kind of flirt with the very militaristic imagery. And right now, regardless, a lot of these Antifa groups are boycotting venues that these bands play at. They are boycotting the bands. They're saying these guys are fascists because we don't like this thing that they did, right? So this one guy from a non-fascist band called Behemoth, they're actually one of the biggest. I don't know if they're an extreme metal band, Behemoth. This guy puts a shirt out, and it's of a black metal guy shooting an Antifa guy, right? And so now Behemoth, yeah, right. All these people are calling this band a Nazi band, but they're not. They're just anti-Antifa. So it's really interesting So if you're telling me, this is just me, and I'm sure not everybody's in the same boat, but if somebody says, and this literally happened with Slapshot when I was like years and years ago, like 15 years ago, well, I was straight edge, and these guys are, no, 15, like probably close to 30 years ago. These guys, I was like straight edge, I didn't drink, didn't do drugs at the time, and these guys like, we don't like Slapshot. And I'm like, what do you mean we? I think I like that band. And they're like, we don't. They're hardline. We don't agree with that. I'm like, what do you mean we? You keep saying we like I'm part of this crowd. And all it made me want to do is to find out what the problem was with Slapshot. And so I went and I listened to Slapshot. They became one of my favorite bands because they're basically waving the big fuck you in the crowd, right? And for better or worse, I don't think Choke's lyrics are definitely life lessons. In some ways, maybe, but So I really wonder about that, where people want to boycott Savage Henry because they disagree with what he says. Well, should we maybe listen to what he actually has to say and then value it for ourselves, or just trust the censorship that goes on?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, and I think like when you mentioned the like using fascist imagery and that sort of thing, I feel like that happened in punk culture early. Throwing swastikas on everything, but it was to like fuck you to that. You know what I mean? It wasn't. It wasn't
no
in support
political
of it.
overtone,
It was to take it away, take the power away. And, you gotta give a fuck about swastikas. Okay, I'm gonna put all over my shit. I'm gonna put a circle around it and a line through it. Which is like goofy and stupid. But at the same time, other people see that and they go, I got a swastika on there. But did you see the rest of it though?
Yeah,
and it's
there's
the
a lot of
running
that.
joke, and that's the whole. Like I think fucking punk is one big joke. It's like take these 3 chords, smash them together, do it as fast as you can, and go like, oh, you think that's rock and roll? Well, check this out, and then do it fast and gross. Like the whole thing is kind of a joke. So to taking it that seriously.
But then you also have
kinda
those
misses the
guys,
point.
like Sid Vicious, that actually had like the red shirt, white circle, black swastika. It was just like more of an anti-social anthem. Or the old school bikers that had no fucking political angle on it. They're just like, fuck you.
Yeah, it was just to freak people out.
Yeah, exactly. World War II just ended. It might be the 60s, so it was only 15 years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm going to put a swastika on my shit? Holy shit. Now I think it's got a different connotation. But I also think that there's this other side where people are so eager to jump on people for doing the politically incorrect thing. Case in point, I've got a Japanese ukiyo-e woodblock print right there where the kimono has a big fucking swastika on it. But I've been told online where I put a picture of Kali, like the Indian goddess Kali with a swastika. This guy's like, that's a hate symbol. I'm like, It's a hate symbol. This cultural icon is a hate symbol because you are ignorant to their culture and their traditions and their religion. So you see a symbol and you think you know what it means. Who's the real racist here?
Yeah, so it's kind of tunnel vision then, right? Especially when you see it attached to something like that. You go, what's the bigger picture here? Like, somebody just throw a swastika on this, and you go, no, you don't understand the background of it, and that's fine. You know, then whatever. And again, what the fuck is all that anyways, too? Like, I'm going to comment on the internet about it. Okay, cool.
Well,
whatever.
Okay, so it's not even about the racist shit. So for me, it's about censorship, boycotting, things like that. So there's increasingly conspiracy theorists online that are being censored. You know what I mean? And some of them I actually listen to, and other ones I just don't have time for. Obviously, what's a guy from Infowars? His fucking name. What is his name?
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Goddamn
What a
Jones.
fucking whack job. But then there's also David Icke. Do you know David Icke?
Yeah.
See, and David Icke says a lot of things I agree with, but before he goes off and talks about lizard people. But you know, it's entertaining to watch, even as like a potential fiction. You know what I mean? It's a theory.
Yeah.
You don't have. You can accept or reject that theory, and that's, in my mind, freedom. That's liberty, where you can hear what people have to say and say this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you know what? If people are idiots enough to believe that. That says a lot about people, doesn't it?
Well,
should we be censored and have a
it's tough
babysitter
though,
state?
because with guys like Alex Jones, though, I mean, he does start out trying to present himself like this is really the news, and then when he's cornered on it, he says, "Well, no, I'm doing a character." But when he's on there, it's, "Well, no, this is really the truth." And I think a lot of those type of like websites or personalities are also easily corrupted without their knowledge, because they're so eager to just get the next bit of clickbait. They don't care if it's Russian propaganda that ultimately put this out there with an actual intent to spread disinformation about something. All they're worried about is the clicks and likes, and they can argue, go, well, it's either part of my character's show, or so what, it's my freedom of speech, and yeah, sure, I didn't back it up, but I'm not a real journalist, too.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
like
it's
this
a really,
podcast.
that's what I'm saying, it's a weird gray area where it's like you want to be valued as someone who needs to be listened to, but at the same time you don't want to have to back up the things you say, like a real reporter. Not you. I'm talking
Us,
Alex
right
Jones.
now.
Well, we don't have to, because who's looking to us? Who's tuning in weekly? To go, geez, I wonder what they're saying about the next big conspiracy, and I'm going to change how I live my life based on that. Alex Jones does get that. You know what I mean? Those Infowars guys do get that. So that's, to me, that's weird, because I mean, I definitely
It's
agree there should be
legitimate
freedom of choice.
propaganda.
That's the
It's
problem.
propaganda.
That's the problem. So when it does get removed, people go, well, yeah, but they said this and the other thing that was still valid. Well, how come you're taking them down? And it's like, well, this was part of it, and they didn't vet any of that either. They didn't do any research on any of that either. It was just what served whatever their purpose was, and usually it's clicks.
It's a news sounding story based off of conjecture and opinion that they present as a news source, and idiots will accept as a news
Yeah.
source. There's a book by a guy named Edward Bernays, and it's called Propaganda. And he was profoundly influential to another guy by the name of Joseph Goebbels, you know, who was like the propaganda minister of the Nazis. So Edward Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he wrote this book based off of Uncle Siggy's fucking ideas on mass psychology, of how the psychology of the mass is manufactured and how it can be swayed and how it can be used. It's a real simple book. It's great. You could find it on the evil empire of Amazon if you're still using that. But download it or find it, and it's great, because it basically sums up what we're talking about, that people are a mass. Individually, people can be rationed with. People can be, you can have a conversation with a radical and probably de-radicalize them. But when they're washed away with the fervor of like a movement, their rational thought just detracts. They're like, yes, that's the right thing, because everybody around me is going, yes, that's the right thing, and they just get swept away with it, and that's how atrocity happens. And in this book, he has a very good point about ethics. He's like, if you understand psychology, you can manipulate psychology. It's profoundly unethical to use these techniques to sell a lie. And because legitimate hypnosis kind of idea, if you can sway your consciousness, and you can sell people on whatever you want to sell them on. And I think that's where we're living. But this is another element that scares me. Social media has allowed that to happen. That those people that can influence social media can influence the people using social media. And conversely, social media can choose who they censor and who they don't. So that's, who's the deciding factors here? Who are the people?
Well, see, that's almost like, that's the catch-22. Like when you're like, well, they allowed it to happen, and then it's like, well, what don't they allow then? Because then that becomes the censorship of it, right? When you create a platform,
And who
if
are
that's
they?
But if you create a platform like that, if people use it for an ill intent, like you just created it to put information out there, and then they use it how they want to spread disinformation, you know, are you required to make sure that they're keeping on top of that? And then that comes back to censoring people and pulling stuff off because it's...
Exactly, like all of these... Once upon a time, we took for granted that news was objective information. But we forgot that almost every news agency was bought and owned, and it was privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't owned by the collective. They're privately owned media sources, media groups. Same thing with social media. These are these huge corporations that are owned by shareholders and individuals with politics, agendas, investments that want these things to sway towards maximizing profits or a certain agenda, right? So who do we really trust in the age of disinformation? I guess is the real question. You know what I mean? I understand somebody wants to boycott a band that they don't agree with. That's your right. But to tell a venue, you're not allowed to put this on because I don't agree with it, that's a different angle, you know what I mean? But ultimately, it falls on the venue owner's discretion. Now, if that venue is the only place in town that puts music on, or like whatever it is, a bookstore, you can't sell this book because I disagree with the ideas on this book. You know what I mean? If that bookstore stops selling that information, are they not just controlling the narrative? And that really, I wonder about that. You know, when people talk about free speech, I tend to support free speech, but I don't have faith in people. You know what I mean?
Well, because they abuse that all the time. That belief that what you're trying to say is truthful and that's why you're saying it. But when they're using something that they know is a lie and then hiding behind freedom of speech is, well, that's my opinion, because I can make anything my opinion. You know what I mean? What color is this table? Black? Nope, looks orange to me. Prove me wrong. Looks orange to me. Maybe I got hit in the head and it looks orange to me, but it looks orange to me. So that's the truth.
Or you can play semantic games.
Frustrating. Because I got an agenda when I'm doing that, right? There's no reason to be like that about it, but it's because I want to have this outcome.
See, I would like to think that everybody would be responsible enough to discern what makes sense and what doesn't. But people vote, they buy, they make decisions based on their confirmation bias, what they want to be true, as opposed to what actually is true. And I saw it very heavily because this is the first year I think I really got active in supporting a specific political agenda with elections. You know what I mean? I tend to lean on the middle, center, left. You know what I mean? But I saw a lot of far-right people that are like, you know, we need to vote in a conservative government and this and that and the other thing, right? But then I look at the platforms. I'm like, but they're not telling the truth. You know, there is no grand conspiracy to destroy family values. There's none of this stuff. But, you know, you're being sold a narrative. But at the same time, the far left are selling another narrative that they're so oppressed and like there's no freedom for individuals. And I'm like, I think that might be a little excessive as well. Where's the middle ground to these two combating narratives? You know, I understand wanting to ban hate speech, but are we also going to ban the people that want to confiscate the richest property, like the ultra left? You know, you want ultra conservative segregation to be banned, but you want collectivist, you know, communism to have free reign? That's just another group of people controlling the narrative. And who are the ones that decide which are the censored and which are the ones that are free to talk? You know, I'm involved with some communities and they talk about the author Ayn Rand, you know, being the worst thing ever. You know, she wrote like Atlas Shrugs and Anthem. And she's an individualist, basically. I don't care about her ideas on capitalism being like the best political system, because I don't agree with capitalism. But I believe in the right of the individual to say what's in their heart. You don't like it, don't follow it. That's a pretty simple thing. You know what I mean? You don't like how I have sex, don't have sex like me. You know what I mean? But don't tell me I can't have sex the way I have sex because you don't like it. You don't do it, right? I don't know. Censorship's a tough one with me. And what do we believe when it comes to free speech? We need to protect people? Are we children?
Well, see, and that's the thing. If we're all equally educated, right, then there's an even playing field. But a lot of people are kind of screwed right from the get-go too. Like, I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into what I was just about to say.
Okay, let's go with popular culture, okay? The lack of education. I was educated by punk rock lyrics. And those things in punk rock lyrics, I followed up, and I read on, and I educated myself as best as possible with what I thought was legitimate sources. You know what I mean? Like real history as opposed to the propagandized version of history. But I also grew up listening to like oi music, which was largely conservative to right-wing, and punk rock, which was largely left-wing to radical left-wing. You know, I was listening to bands like, you know, Cro-Mags and Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
Pro-mags are a bunch of Hare Krishna skinheads, and Dead Kennedys are like California liberals, which is like, you know, two different worlds. New York street, vegetarian street fighter guys versus Jello Biafra, which is like, let's talk about the exploitation of other countries by the U.S. prison industrial complex or whatever, or military industrial complex. So, it's a tough one. And all of them were allowed to say what they were saying at one time. I don't know.
Well, see, again, the difference lies in the medium. For me, that's clearly art when you're making a song, right? And then that's open to interpretation. Well, again, like with your Alex Joneses, with your Roger Stones, those guys are presenting themselves as news, as legitimate sources of information. But there's none of the vetting, there's none of the controls that any other mainstream media, no matter how manipulated a person thinks it is or who it's owned by. At least you can collaborate a picture from different sources when you're going, well, they're all telling me sort of the same story, you know. Then I've got this guy at Infowars who's telling me something way out of left field, and it's to balance those as the same. I just don't think it does.
Okay.
You know?
So yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
But that's a lot of work on the individual to do that, right?
Once upon a time, there was ethics in news and ethics in journalism that they would crack, and they would say, like, look, you aren't a real journalist.
Yeah.
You're not ethical.
Yeah.
You're spreading this information.
Yeah. Well, but sorry, then guys like Roger Stone come along, and then where that, oh man, anybody out there who doesn't know about Roger Stone, please look into Roger Stone. His case is currently going on right now. I don't know if he's sentenced in jail or what's happening, but anyways, he's someone who, after Nixon went through with Watergate, realized and helped to cultivate this world of right-wing media that was, you know, if we had a media source that we could manipulate when Nixon was president, we could have done a lot better to keep this hidden and had enough of it muddled that people couldn't have really got on one side or the other, and maybe it wouldn't have gone that way. And he's someone who's actively worked since then to cultivate that, along with Paul Manafort. He did that as well for trying to help the grossest despots around the world make a better public image and try to get themselves not look like they were committing wars or crimes against humanity in their own countries. So and then this is a guy who ends up with a show on Infowars doing the same thing alongside Alex Jones, but has had 30 years of being inside this political system of just. If anybody watches it, you see this guy. He knows he's the first troll, as far as I'm concerned.
He knows how to tweak
troll.
and then say, "Oh, it's just a joke."
And
or
that's his whole
serious.
thing. That's his whole existence. That's what it's all about. And he knows as long as your name's in the media, that's all that matters. As long as somebody's talking about you, doesn't matter what they're saying, because you're going to be able to spin it any way you want, as long as you've got another source that you can go, well, yeah, the National Enquirer said this, and sure, it's not reputable, but it said it.
Oh yeah, I've got a list of bunk sources.
Yep.
Nobody really.
Exactly.
Oh, look at his list of sources,
Yep.
and then you go to one, and it's like an anti-Semitic website or something like that.
Exactly.
You know? See, and I see that a lot, and these people influence a slew of independent meme makers. And these independent meme makers look like a legitimate little like news snippet. Like memes are basically you're sharing headlines, and that's all it is. And that sharing headlines back in the day would have been a poster put on the wall with an image and a slogan. You know, like whatever nasty slogan you wanted to put. Pro-war, anti-war, pro-politics, pro-leader, anti-leader. That's all it was. But now we're being inundated with it on social media. And you see, because I follow a couple groups, like this is the Right Wing Stable Memeing Ability is one, and it shares, like the U.S. specifically, the ultra-right memes, not even ultra-right, conservative right, that the misinformation, like there's a couple that are floating around, and why the fuck are these people sharing these memes? Like Michelle Obama is a man? Like there's underground pedophile rings running out of pizza stores in the USA. Like these rich people go to fuck kids and get adrenochrome out of their brain. What's going on in people's brains? And they share it and they convince individuals, oh, look at the sources. Look at the sources. There's no fucking sources for this shit.
I think all of that comes from a much deeper root of I already have a need to hate or distrust this person based on something I can't say out loud to everybody else. I can't say it's because she's a woman. I can't say it's because he's black. But if I've got this conspiracy, I go, you know what? I knew they were bad, plus this.
Yeah.
And you know what? It doesn't. And you can try and discredit it, but I mean that's just you trying to fill me full of fake news. You know, and that's to me that's the only place that can come from, because I think if you're a reasonable, rational person looking at this, you go, well, that seems false on its face. If any of this was true, people would be in jail then. This would be all over someplace other than, like you keep saying Infowars, but other than a place like that. You know what I mean?
Well, you'd think they'd be in jail.
Now this is a bigger problem of our sit. No, I totally agree. I think that there's plenty on either side that should definitely have had prison sentences for things they've committed that they've managed to somehow get around simply because of their place in society.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Last I checked, Jeffrey Epstein's dead.
Yeah.
Well, that says something. So this high-profile creep, legitimate creep, gets arrested for his fucking creep shit.
Of all creeps, yeah.
Well, he's just a facilitator for the creeps of all creeps.
That's it. That's it. I hope everyone's getting that also, guys. Is like, this guy is an absolute garbage pile. He existed because worse monsters needed to use him.
Yes, and he facilitated them. And he's got pictures, or there's pictures of him with like leading political figures, arm in arm. We're hanging out all coked up at some fucking party. Like, oh, look at that girl. Like, fuck, dude, you're the president. Anyway, so these fucking assholes, there's proof that this guy exists. He gets arrested. He's got his little black book, just like Monica, no, what's that chick, Heidi Fleiss.
Yep.
Got his little black book of who visited and who did what with who. Suddenly dies. Where are the tapes? Suddenly missing. Where's the security? Oh, they took the night off, or they weren't on their posts. Wow, what a crazy.
You know what I like about all this though is that people keep going, well, you know, it was the Clintons, right? They got him killed, and I'm like, you know, she doesn't have a job, right? You know what I mean? Like,
okay,
yeah.
It must be the Clintons, but here's these 3 or 4 videos and photos of him with Trump. You know, that's the guy. Fuck.
Yeah,
I don't get this.
And princes and whatever.
Yeah, I don't even. You want to trip down a rabbit hole?
Yeah.
You look up fucking Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile, you know this guy?
I'm not familiar, no.
Oh my god, he was kind of top of the hops or something like, no, it was like top of the charts or something. He's an English, kind of like American Bandstand, but the English-American Bandstand, Jimmy Savile. And this guy was knighted, and he hung around with Prince Charles, Margaret Thatcher. He was Sir Jimmy Savile, and they found bones on his property. He sexually assaulted over 500 children. He would have aristocratic parties with these people. He was right in that aristocrat kind of upper echelon in England, milling about with these people. He was an untouchable individual, and he was a fucking degenerate, evil scumbag. So I believe there's real things happening, but there's almost like a real disinformation campaign to blur what's actually going on.
Well, that's what you do. And it's funny because you find a lot of these people, when you start looking what industries they get into, media is one of the things they buy their own. Even if it's a shitty little local newspaper, they'll still buy one because you can always do that then. You can always put something out, get an editor somewhere to go, well, I guess we'll put this, I know it's not vetted, but it's fine. Well, then you've got that out there.
You got your source.
And you've got that other narrative. When they go, well, everybody else is saying, yeah, but this is the guy with the real news. And then you backtrack, you go and follow, it turns out it was bullshit, but by then you're 3 or 4 stories down the line, and then you got to keep backtracking and following those. When, if you want to look to the honest truth of it, just look at it like a person, and you'll go, oh, well, no, there's that doesn't make any sense on its face. What they're saying doesn't make sense. Everybody else saying it does. That's it.
See,
but we don't want that. We want a bigger story. We want more explanation.
Oh, like people love a grand myth. They love a grand myth.
That's why true crime stories are so popular.
Hollywood's
right?
based off of it. Yeah. Grand myths. It's too easy to say, once you get too rich, you think you're above the law and you can do whatever degenerate shit you fucking want and you're not going to go to jail. That's just too easy to say. And guess what? When you do get caught, they fucking off you. And you know, that's not a grand conspiracy. That's just fucking logic. You know, there's this story, like, what is it? How much does it cost to I tattooed this guy in my neighborhood. He's like, well, how much does it cost to park down here? I'm like, well, if you park over here, you're going to get like a $30 ticket. He's like, so it costs $30 to park here.
Right? I'd heard a similar anecdote, and I never thought of people with money, that's how they look at those situations. It's not that it's a fine, that's what it costs.
That's what it costs.
If I get caught.
Yeah, if I get caught, how much does it cost to get me off, for this thing that I did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so this is a $100,000 thing? I think that's worth the risk. And I didn't watch Leaving Neverland. I don't need to watch that creepy shit. It fucking bugs me in my heart for my own reasons. But when somebody's got constant payouts, the Vatican, constant payouts to fucking stop these charges and these legitimate crimes, what the fuck's going on? Like, that means you can get away with it, whatever you want, as long as you have the money to get away with it, and that's a problem. It's a two-tier society already.
Well, and that's what we're supposed to be escaping. When you leave a monarchy, it wasn't who your dad was; it was what your value was, right? And now, It's, what's your value?
Yeah.
How many zeros you got behind that? Then we'll decide how we're going to deal
What
with it.
neighborhood do you live in? You know what I mean?
Oh,
there's-
fuck.
What is
That
it?
kid getting shot down in the States, man. That's a
Oh,
prime
man.
example of
It's
that.
it's a brutal one. It's a brutal one. You got old school racism, and I don't know the full story, but the fact of the matter is, there's been tons of that. There's tons of it. We see it up here.
I know. Yeah, it
Colton
continues to
Bushi,
happen.
you got that guy running down in the States. You got old school racism, and you've got a lot of people that act out with bad coping mechanisms due to the socioeconomic trauma that's been forced on them over the generations. And so the kids that act out badly mar it for every kid that looks like them, and the good old boys just pat each other on the back every time they say some racist bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, fucking Ted, let's fucking do that shit, fuck them. And every time this happens, nothing's gonna change. Every redneck that high fives his homeboy for being a fucking scumbag is going to encourage everybody at the table to be a scumbag. But at the same time, every little hood rat that encourages his homies to go fucking rob people to get by, is it going to encourage that redneck to do the same shit?
Yeah.
There's a lack of ownership out of
Well,
all of
it's
these
that
communities.
balance on either side too, right? It's like this one's as shitty as it can be, this one's as shitty as it can be, and we're gonna keep perpetuating each other, right?
But what I can do as a white guy, right, is try and hold my white guy buddies to a higher standard. You know what I mean?
Yep.
As opposed to going out there and criticizing people that aren't me, I can criticize people that are me.
And honestly, I think that's where you have an opportunity to actually even change somebody's opinion. Because they go, well, so after they get over the initial shock of being called out on what they said, they go, well, why are you saying it? And you go, well, because it's not the fucking right thing to say. Like that's it. What I actually had this conversation once with this kid I worked with. He was telling some fucking joke and joke, and he gets to the end of it, and I'm kind of like, so what was the point of all that, And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, that's a racist fucking thing to say, right? And he's like, well, yeah, but it's a joke. I said, yeah, okay. I said, but what's the point? You wanted to get a laugh? You don't think there was any other way you could have maybe got a laugh right now that wasn't that route? And if that's the only route you can take, do you need to get a laugh right now? And he's kind of like, well, I never thought of it like that. I'm like, well, exactly. I said, it was such a minor thing, but why you didn't think about what the intention was of it, and you didn't think about the hurt of it. You thought you were going to get a laugh and kind of get one, and it was an okay place to do it. And then as soon as I was
because you're in an in-group and they're the other.
Exactly. And yeah, so to me, that's the whole thing with that. With stuff like that, it's like, if it's just there to hurt and you think you might kind of get a laugh, it's like, well, then what's the point? Why bother?
See, this is part of my issue with white extremists, with white nationalists. I've been there and done that. I came out the other side. I know.
Well, sorry, that's actually something that more than a few people that I was contacted was like, as we were talking about stuff last time, it was just like, as we're rolling over things, like, wait a minute, skinhead? They're like, yeah, I want to hear more about that. I'd like to know, how do you go, where does that mindset come from? I'm not saying you have to delve into it hard today. I'm just saying that's something that definitely people were like, wow, that was something, I would tune back in to hear more about that, because I just think it's such a foreign world for so many people that how do you even get to that place?
Okay, no, but is it? We watch shows about hip hop lifestyle, about young disillusioned black kids getting jumped into a gang or getting recruited into a gang because they've got family, they've got love, solidarity, backup, they have security, safety, all those things on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. They've got your physiological needs are met, your safety and security needs are met. You feel love and belonging, maybe for the first time in your life. This is a group of people with common interests that make you feel like you belong. It's no different for a disillusioned white kid living in fucking poverty or an unhappy family life that hits the streets, that runs into some guys like, yo man, you're just like me. Don't you know why your life is shit? It's because of those guys over there. Come here, read this magazine, here, read this book, listen to this band. And next thing you know, they're like, wow, these guys that are smarter than me and they're stronger than me, they're willing to back me up, and they're talking what seems to make sense to a young, disillusioned, angry man. And as opposed to in the hood, these guys are sitting there and they're trying to say, I need to make money, I need to get out of my situation. In I'd say, let's say a white trash world, it's like this is why you don't fit into the system. Because your opportunities have been stolen by somebody else.
Yes. Okay. So I think that's the key difference, right? Because that's what I mean. When you're already a white person and you already have that comfort in society at that level, then you see someone do this and you go well, how do you get there? You know what I mean?
Why don't I have that privilege?
No. Sorry. No, how do you get that angry? Without even realizing it, because it's like you haven't been. Whereas you're identifying with someone who grew up, black and young and angry. That's for that group. Maybe that's a lot of people can connect with that. Whereas there's a lot of white people that didn't grow up white and young and angry. You know
See,
what I mean?
I guess that's
so that
part
was
of it.
hard. I think that's why that they have such a hard time trying to figure out how you get there. Whereas a lot of other groups would be like, yeah, to get into a gang, okay, I know how you get there. I got cousins in gangs, but there's lots of white people I know that doesn't resonate with them in any way because they've never really been anywhere near that. You know?
Well, when you're mad and you don't have a place to fit in, and you know that there's something wrong with the world, you're looking for answers. You know what I mean? And you're going to notice, like, the profile for the young man that joins a gang is the same profile for a young man that joins a cult, or the same profile for the young man that joins a military. They're looking for something to belong to that's bigger than them, that gives them a purpose.
Sure.
And the first people that come along and say, hey man, this is your purpose, and here, on top of your purpose, here's a uniform, and here's a music style, and here's an identity, and here's an insider's code that you know what these symbols mean. Yep. Suddenly you belong to something. You have an identity, and you've got a righteous crusade. You know what I mean?
I kind of felt a little bit of that with punk rock.
Like that punk rock saved me from,
like putting patches on your pants and your jacket. When you're out, you've seen someone else that was like waving a flag, but in not a negative, disgusting way.
Well, and that's just it. At the time, it's not a negative, disgusting
I know, I'm
thing.
just giving you.
But the thing is, what I realized over the years is when you listen to these bands that are like white nationalist bands or racist skinhead bands, so many of them, they wear their heart on their sleeve. Their songs are about hate. It's not about, I want a better neighborhood, I'm going to clean up the streets, I'm going to help my friends get sober, I'm going to exercise and get my lung capacity up. It's like, no, fuck everybody else. And that's what it's about. It's, I'm angry. Realistically, I'm angry at myself. I'm not good enough, and what's it going to take for me to be a better version of myself? Whatever cheap cop-out way I can, and I'm going to join a gang, and that's the quickest fucking way.
Yeah, put the uniform on, I'm already a little bit better.
Yeah,
Get the
exactly.
haircut, okay, I'm a little bit better.
I'm part of something bigger, and so that's just it. And I see now that the young, aggressive man that doesn't fit into society, and it doesn't matter what socioeconomic background you come from, we're all fighting against the same common principle, that which oppresses the individual. You know what I mean? That which limits our ability to achieve our self-esteem in life. We're struggling to get our food and our water and our shelter, and then above that we're trying to stay safe at night, and so I was in a feedback loop. You know what I mean? I didn't really feel safe at home. I did have food and shelter, but I didn't feel safe at home. I hit the streets. I was looking for love and belonging. I was a fucking slut for a long time. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So I was looking for whatever resembled love. And, alcohol made me happy, drugs made me happy, 3 hours in the bedroom made me happy, weapons made me happy, and having backup made me happy. These things in my mind I replaced as being a sense of belonging and a sense of love. And and my brain thought this is self-esteem. You know what I mean? Because I didn't really do the self-work to heal my trauma or to address the real fucking stuff. And when I went through my nervous breakdowns and shit, I had to look directly at my trauma, and I came out the other side saying, all that stuff is superficial. Who I really am, I don't need that. But it took me a long fucking time, and I think a lot of young men, especially disillusioned young men, I notice it more with people that don't have white privilege, obviously, because it's an uphill fight across their entire life. I remember going into the Target store, and I was wearing like a t-shirt or maybe even a tank top and army shorts, and I'm going shopping. I have money in my pocket, but I'm getting followed around by floor walkers left and right, and I'm like, fuck you, you don't know me. You know what I mean? And that was, and
Fuck you don't know
well,
me.
right, and I'm like, and I clued in at that moment. I'm like, but anything that I'm being followed for has been a conscious decision. I made this. I did this to myself. I covered myself in tattoos. I've dressed the way I could. And if I want, I could wear a suit, and most of my tattoos are covered up, and they wouldn't follow me around. In fact, they'd probably kiss my ass. Now, if I was born a different color, from a different country, I didn't speak the language so much, they'd be doing the same thing just because of the way I was born, and how furious would I be because of that? And that was when I first understood the principle of white privilege. I'm treated a certain way because I'm white, because I speak the way I do. Now, if I had an accent, if you toss an accent on me, or you make me look a different way that isn't the dominant system, I don't fit into that system, So a lot of this stuff, my politics now are a result of unpacking a lot of the shit that I went through. Yeah. But I stand in the middle. I think radicalized young white men that are being attracted to, the negative aspects of like white nationalism, racism, Nazi groups, I think they're just misguided. You know what I mean? They're really misguided about who the true enemy in this situation is.
Oh, and I feel like you would know that for sure the first time you talk to one. you call them out on any of their shit. Once they're pre-programmed little quips and comebacks that they've heard reinforcing everybody else, you shoot holes in that, and they don't have any value, and they actually have to explain their policies and how they stand and what they believe. Well, they can't do it. They can't because it's all shallow. It's all on the surface, right?
There was this one, I believe it was a Russell Brand podcast. He interviewed a Muslim woman who went out of her way to, she's got YouTube movies or documentaries, went out of her way to befriend alt-right white nationalists, skinheads and stuff like that. And she's a Muslim woman. And she's like, so she just interviewed them and she would get to know them. And she would go to their rallies with them and stuff. And she actually got assaulted by people walking with these guys, by the Antifa, that are like, fuck you, you're a sympathizer, and they smash her because she's got a camera and videotaping these people. So these guys start protecting her. And after a while, they're like, you're my friend, and my politics don't hold water anymore because you are not what I was told you were.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so a lot of these people, they just come from a situation where they're lonely, they're angry, they want answers, they need a support group, and then the only support group they find are not a positive support.
Well, and they're already kind of segregated too. They don't have a bunch of interactions. I find I had this like running gag with people when I would work. You know, like I'd run into people who were racist. I'm like, you know what? That shit doesn't work very long, right? So like you work with someone who's of that race, and you go, well, yeah, but I mean, like Bill's pretty good, but I don't know about the rest
He's
of them,
one of
right?
the good
and then you
ones.
go with Bill one weekend, and you meet his family, and you go with some of his friends, and you go fishing, and you go, well, yeah, Bill and his buddies, I mean, they were a pretty good time. They like the same stuff I do, you know, but I don't know about the rest of them yet. And then, you know, eventually gets to a point where like you get the fucking point what I'm telling you, right? Like these are all individuals that are all very much like you, and you just put this weird barrier because you don't know about it. And then they eventually do get to a point, but it takes that integration, you know?
Well, it goes both ways, because I got a lot of Native friends, you know, that have come out of like histories of addiction or abuse and stuff like that. And we've got stuff in common because I'm sober, and you know, I work that program. And but at the same time, we do have to recognize that there's cultural differences between a culture of traumatized individuals and the non-traumatized people. You can't expect the average, you know, colonially functional white guy to be able to go into a reserve environment and just like fit in like no problem. You're not gonna get it.
I have a
right?
funny story about that. I was hanging out with a buddy of mine whose family grew up on James Smith, and he for that afternoon he had to rip out there for some ceremony thing that was going on. It was a big party, and he said, "Well, come out with me for the afternoon, and just hang, and then we'll come back tonight." And we were already out, this is going to bear into the story as I get along. So we go. As we get onto the reserve, I start to realize what I'm wearing. And my mom is a prison guard down in the States, and she'd sent us like some old prison uniforms they had kicking around, and that's what I put on that day because I'm just fucking around out in my yard, and Earl's gonna stop by and we're gonna have a drink, and then he's like, "Well, let's head out of town." And okay, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, am I going to be the only fucking white guy at this thing and I'm dressed like a prison guard? Like, that's as assholey as you can go, right? You showed up in a uniform, you know? Like, this was not intentional. But of course, like all people, they were just cool. You know what I mean? They were just like, well, you're with him, that's cool, you know what I mean? Like, but to begin with, I'm like, fuck, that's like such a ridiculous move. Like, how do you do that?
Well, you got Elmer Waterhen. He's like King of the Cage.
Love Elmer.
Elmer's a motherfucker. I love that guy. And like, he ran me through more than a couple times, you know. And with Elmer, a tap is a suggestion. Yeah. It's a request, you know. And
when he's done.
Well, and that's just it. And you know, we trained with a couple guys, I think, that were correctional guards. And I saw him go up to these guys straight up. You think you're tough? All right, we can solve that. We can figure that out because I'm tough for real.
Yeah.
And like, he had no love for like the institution, and I don't blame him. You know, when truth and reconciliation, when you actually get the truth of what happened to the Indigenous people in Canada, holy fuck, no wonder people are pissed off. Like, and that's just it. And reconciliation becomes the issue. Like, how do we say sorry to these people for what we fucking did? And I say we collectively, because, well, you know what? My behavior and my attitudes contributed to the atmosphere that isolates individuals in the society. So I guess, yeah, what we did to these people, where's our ownership for what we did to fuck it up as a government? And you can look at it in a metaphor like almost like the person or the individual that causes trauma and the person that receives trauma. So I've been injured, you caused the injury.
Yeah.
So now that the person that's been injured says, I've been injured, the person that did the injury, do they just say, no, how do I make it better? Here's some money. Go away now. I don't want to talk about it. Can we just get on with things?
Yeah.
You know, you need that ownership. The person that's been injured says, look, I've been fucking traumatized. I have horrible coping skills as a result of the trauma you caused me. So how much is it responsible? This is where I'm at. That's the truth of the matter. Where's the reconciliation? Well, the individual that causes the trauma kind of says, yeah, I fucked up, and I can't make it better, but where do we go from here? But that ownership of I fucked up is the important part, and I think the Canadian government...
Well, that's usually all any victim wants, right?
Recognition.
It's not like everybody wants punishment, but yeah, they want to be, I fucking said this happened and then no one listened to me, no one did anything about it. Like, that's, I totally agree with that.
And so
in the 60s scoop, it wasn't 150 years ago. This is 60 years ago. There's still people alive that lived through this. That the trauma that was done to them is absolutely affecting people that are going to be born tomorrow.
Residential schools were operating into the 70s.
There you go.
Like, it's fucking ridiculous.
We're not that removed from it. That's because I think a lot of people think it's so long ago. Why can't everybody get over it? And it's like,
if it happened to your dad,
that's it, right? If that was my grandparents. I would know about it. It would be something that would come up, and it would always be there.
Would it come up, or would it affect everything they did?
That's what I should have said.
It's not a conversation topic.
Changes everything. Right?
You know what? If I was raised with this in the side of my head, I'm gonna probably raise my kid with this in the side of his head, and he's gonna raise his kid the same way. And every other creepy fucking thing that happened in the residential schools as a result of people that have lost a tradition and a roots and a history. And so the Canadian government is the individual that caused a lot of fucking trauma, and they're doing everything they can to say, not us, not us, how do we fix this? Just fucking own your shit and say, where do we go from here? By listening to you? By listening to what you are saying? So I think this is therapy 101, right? Like, how do we deal with trauma? We admit that what we've done, we admit what it caused us to do. And we admit what happened to us, so we admit what we've done as a cause of it. We make a fearless and searching moral inventory. That's a 12-step program, right? And
fearless and searching moral inventory.
And then it's ugly. It's ugly. Like fucking, you kind of have to go through hell in order to get to that point. But once you do it, you can be honest with yourself. And I think this is everything that the settler colonial system is avoiding doing. They're avoiding owning the fact that we did some fucked up shit. That the Vatican's on a gold throne due to stolen fucking wealth. That the monarchies are fueled by stolen fucking wealth. And the people that had their entire cultures and property robbed from them are still traumatized as a result. And you could look at it as a micro level or a macro level. I think that these are all the same things, A victim of trauma jumps through whatever fucking hoops they can to try and heal their trauma, good, bad, or ugly. You know what I mean? And half the time they don't even know. They're too busy in a... whatever the fuck thing they're trying to, their negative coping mechanisms, right? I don't know. So me being a skinhead was legitimately a result of my youth, my trauma as a kid. You know what I mean? Looking for answers, looking for solutions, looking for happiness, safety, all of that shit. And I went to a lot of bad places. You know what I mean? And you've seen some of them, you know what I mean? Trying to heal that stuff. And now I think, ideally, I'm working on coming up the other side. Trying to be a man as opposed to a boy.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like probably a lot in that world where you do find people that eventually see the truth, come disillusioned with it and go, holy fuck, I've been kind of lying to myself. I've been running from something. I've been looking for something that I thought I was getting here and I wasn't. Because I don't know of a lot of like old skinheads. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like
they all have pompadours.
Yeah. Yeah.
You like the stray cats?
But you like the stray cats. But yeah.
Well, and that's just it. So I wouldn't consider myself, I've got that oi streak. I still listen to a lot of the music, even the politically incorrect stuff. But I've kind of morphed, I'd like to say, and this is a very important thing, everybody that's involved with, political discourse wants a better world. You know what I mean? They all see that something is wrong and they want a better world. Now, what we need to work on is finding the commonality of what the world is that we all want and realize we're all in the same boat. And that's a big thing, because when I started realizing, there's a lot of people that are really without anything, and there's a very few amount of people that are really with everything. Now, that's fucked up, and I think we all can agree on that. Now, individual narratives and political agendas might say, well, who are the people at the top? You know what I mean? Obviously, the right-wing, ultra-right-wing say, oh, it must be Jews, and the communists are like, oh, it must be all the billionaires, you know what I mean? So, and okay, but we all agree there's something wrong with this world, and we can work together to make a better world, but it's working together to make a better world. You know what I mean? And I think the commonality between the people that are on the ground versus the people that are on the top is a lot stronger than the divisive stuff. You know what I mean? I love, like,
We have a lot of the same problems.
well, man, you know, I love hip hop. I love, like, East LA lowrider culture. I love punk rock. I love metal. You know what I mean? Because I understand that commonality with all of these people being pissed off because they got the shit end of the stick. You know what I mean? So where does that come from? Now, that's not like Miley Cyrus and fucking pop culture. You know, I think the people that pop culture are really into pop culture is because this system works for them. But subculture is subculture for a reason.
Oh, it's because you're comfortable in it. I remember telling friends of mine back in the day, I was like, I would love it if I turned on the radio and all I heard was songs I wanted to hear. I can't listen to the radio, though, because I don't hear anything I want to hear. I have to go and find my own music and make my own CDs or load an MP3 or whatever.
Well, how many love songs and everything is great ballads do you want to hear? Everything is awesome.
Everyone
is
I can.
great. Well, and that's just it. That's top 40 AM radio, man. You know, when you actually start getting into subculture stuff and you listen to what people are talking about and on the roots, on the ground of where they live, you hear a different story. And like oi music, were the people on the ground in usually England at the time. You know what I mean? A no future working class youth that really had no future. Hip hop was the people that were on the ground in, you know, New York or LA or other cities that really have no future. You know, there's one of my favorite bands is Psycho Realm, their hip hop group. They played with Necro and Riley's, and then these guys came on and they're straight cholos, you know, like vados, and they got guys with skull masks and baseball bats on stage and they're fucking swinging them around. I'm like, okay, who are these guys? So I picked up one of their CDs and like they were rad. And Slick Jack and DJ Muggs used to be in House of Pain. I listened to House of Pain when I was a kid. So these guys, they're basically talking about a subculture revolution where people start becoming entrepreneurs on their own. You know what I mean? You got like Mr. Cartoon, the tattooer. If you're on Netflix, check out LA Originals. It's this group of people, Soul Assassins, Psycho Realm, and it's like East LA culture that influenced the world. You know what I mean? And but it's an underground culture that's saying, hey, this is what's going on here. What's going on there? What's going on here? You know, so you got New York hardcore bands with members that are playing in hip hop acts that are playing with LA hip hop acts that are connected with lowrider culture, which is connected with chopper culture, which is so we're all part of one network. If you can look at the actual culture of the underground versus arbitrary divisions like what language you speak or what color you are, man. I go to fucking Japan. You want to talk about an island landlocked away from everywhere else? I've met cooler nerds that were into like underground culture in Japan than I ever did anywhere else. They remind me of Saskatoon people because they're like, you're into this? This one guy runs out of his store. He's like, Skull Skates, Petey's Hot Shop, Vancouver. I'm like, yeah. Like, right?
Originated in Regina.
Well, right. So he drags me into his store, DV8, and he's showing me all this old memorabilia. Like, this guy had like chrome chopper helmets, and like from the '60s, he had vests from clubs that you're not supposed to have that people just shipped off to Japan, you know. And he's like, don't tell people. And I'm like, oh, okay, don't worry. But like, he had some cool shit in there, and they're like nostalgia fiends in Japan. Because again, they're in the middle of nowhere and they didn't have access to anything else, you know?
Well, that was purposeful. They wanted to maintain their empire, so you got to be cut off from everybody else, and also like, shit. Well, and something. I mean, I'm not that big in Japanese culture. I've never been, but something I've noticed is a lot of times it's like they'll take something that's cool, then find the coolest parts of it and keep that. You know what I mean? Like they kind of get rid of the rest of it. Exactly. They figure out how to hot rod it or fine tune it or refine it. And I dig the shit out of that because it's like, yeah, if they're into rockabilly, they're fucking into rockabilly, right?
It's a pompadour. Pompadour.
Yeah, right?
Oh,
I dig that.
I think they've got the motorcycle culture. I think it's called Bozazuko or something like that.
I don't know the pronunciation, but I've seen it as well. They're
they got
really
the tailpipes.
tall.
And like, oh man, it's crazy.
I dig that.
But it takes a very certain like type of fan to really be into that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so when I got there for my first trip to Osaka, one of our tour guides was a local Japanese tattooer, and he shows up, he's wearing like cherry Doc Martens, straight-laced, a green flight jacket, and a short cropped hair. I'm like, I think we might like some of the same music. So I start trying to chat him up a little bit, and we got along great because we like the same style of punk rock. He starts showing me all these old World War II monuments. I'm like, this is cool. He's like, cool. And like, man, we got along so well. I got a standing invitation to go to a guest spot out there. And that intercultural thing, punk rock or underground culture, brings it all together. And you know, it's weird though, because he was a nationalist Japanese skinhead. Now, do we judge somebody that says Japan has a culture, it has a language, it has a history, it has an art, and I want to preserve that? I believe in Japan.
Yeah. I think that's the same argument people in Quebec make. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
I want
yeah.
to maintain my culture. I want to, I don't want to have to compromise and put the English version of this on here. I want to put what it fucking says.
Yes.
And I get that. I mean, it's easier for me if I was ever there to navigate the streets of in some fucking English. But I get it. Right? Like that makes sense to me, because I do think that even in the translation of something, it becomes diluted a little bit. It doesn't always come and translate straight across.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to keep, what the authenticity of it is and why you're doing it in that area, well, there is something to that. And I think that it would encourage us all to be more flexible. Like, I know lots of people who travel. I don't know a lot of people who learn the language of the place they're traveling to.
Oh, and as the older you get, the harder it is.
And exactly, it is difficult. I'm no different. I didn't learn I knew a tiny bit of French going to France, but I'd never learned more specifically, because I'm hoping that people are going to speak English when I get there, like that.
Isn't that privilege, eh?
Well, that's it, right?
Fuck.
But maybe that kind of encourages us to do that, then, to kind of go, you know what, if I'm going to go there, I expect this of someone when they come to where I am, to kind of, live how the rest of us do. If you do something that's totally out of pocket, it's kind of like, that's not what we do here, buddy.
Yeah, and
but
that's
at the
a
same
nice
time,
way of
how
talking
can
about
I
it.
be the guy that goes there and then does that? You know
Oh,
what I
man.
mean? Like, we don't talk at full volume in the fucking restaurant, sir. I'm like, no, I want to talk.
You don't talk at all on the subways in Japan. You're quiet.
There you go. Yeah, shit like that, right?
And it's crazy where you're a fucking barbarian. You are a guest there. It's very obvious you're a guest there. Know the manners or don't be here. And like, they don't mind telling you, know the manners or don't be here.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into one little old guy, and I think the only English word he knew was shoes. Because I wore my shoes into the wrong area, and like, this guy's probably 80 years old. Shoes, and that's just it. We don't have a problem in North America saying, I don't fucking understand you. The least you could do is learn the language before you come here. Like, that's an accepted
Well, I have a problem with
attitude.
that, but I know what you mean.
That's
Yeah,
an
I know what you
accepted
mean. I know
attitude.
what you mean. Yeah,
But
exactly.
then we go to France, or we go to Germany, or we go to Japan. Japan is where I really notice it. And we're like, well, why don't they speak English?
Yeah, where's the English kiosk?
Yeah, exactly. Fuck, man. I had so many people bend over backwards to try and help me as a foreigner. So, like, I could find a cab, I could find a place to stay, I could find my directions. And they're pulling up their computers trying to find translating, and they're trying to find English translations for maps for me, when we wouldn't do that for anybody here.
Well, to be fair, though, one-on-one, you meet someone and they can't fucking speak the language at all, like you, Pat.
Oh, me?
You pull your
You
phone
maybe.
up. Yeah, I know. But I think even lots of the people who will say that kind of racist shit, it's still, when it comes down to one-on-one, you're in a back road somewhere, they've got a car broken down, you pull up and they can't speak English at all, you're still going to figure out how to fucking get the tire on their car. You know what I mean?
This literally happened to me.
That's what I'm saying, right?
I was...
When it comes to one-on-one, all those barriers change. It's in the theoretical realm of, well, yeah, if they came around here, I'd tell them this, or, whatever. But when it comes to just you and them, all of a sudden all that shit dissolves and you figure out how to make it work.
I was going down Main Street, and I thought something was wrong with my truck, because there was this horrible sound, like, "Daga, daga, 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 daga," and I'm like, oh my god. So I roll down the window, and it's coming from the car in front of me, right? And I'm like, "Daga, daga, daga, daga." So I start, I lay on the horn, I flash my lights, he pulls over a little bit. Buddy had been driving on a flat tire so long, he was down, his rim was crunching down.
Just nubbing it.
And I'm like,
Full nub.
you can't drive on this. He's like, I'm like, no, bad, no, do you have a number, and I'm trying to help him phone. He ended up phoning his brother to call, I'm like, man, I could probably help you get your spare on, but he's like, I got this. But I know a lot of people who just wouldn't really give a shit. You know what I mean?
And fuck them.
Same thing with in our old tattoo shop.
No, I'm just saying, like, I've seen it lots even from, like, old hillbillies. I'll fucking break down somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, and they'll still normally wouldn't spit on me if I was on fire. But because it's just us and we're out there and I'm trying to be a person, they'll fucking deal with me and help me and be cool about it. And by the time we're done, because I'm a chatty Cathy, we're probably going to be kind of friendly by the time it's over. You know what I mean? I mean, that's more me. But I think a lot of people, it's the one-on-one. Again, it's like that mob mentality you were talking about. You get people separated from the rest of it. It's hard to convince them of that, but when everybody's chanting the same thing, right?
You think so? Like the small town? I like to tell people
I do,
traveling
man.
bands, they're traveling bands that when they come through Saskatchewan and Alberta, when you're going through small towns, you're kind of in the Mississippi of the North. Like, this place isn't always the coolest if you're like the trans guitar player in the band when you go to Provost, or wherever the fuck. So you gotta watch your P's and Q's. This one band I watched, Sharptooth. They're very politically active. They opened for
Cancer bands.
Yes, Cancer Band.
Good show.
And they were off to Fort Mac next.
Yeah.
Like, the gig might be different in Fort Mac.
It's a
I'm
little
just
different
saying.
vibe up
You know,
there.
like,
Yeah, they were very political.
Mhm.
They were great. Sharptooth, check them shits out.
yeah.
Yeah, I do, but I think, like, I feel, yeah, when you get down to the actual, the interaction with people in small towns and shit, like, they do help. They will want to. That's their initial fucking thing, even if they're kind of scared and worried, especially if you engage with them. You know,
If they're
like-
kind of
like-
scared,
like,
even if they're kind
I
of
feel-
scared of
exactly,
you.
I feel like I've got more the experience of, we've never had one of you around here before by the time it's done. You know what I mean? That's been my experience. When it starts
What do
as
you
like,
mean by
we've
you
never had
people?"
one of you around here before. And then you get done and you're like, hey, we've never had one of you around here before. You know, like, that's been more my thing. But I guess that's, I don't know, I'm not easily swayed either.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So it's interesting. I was hanging out with a Japanese friend of mine, and he's kind of hooked up into some shady friends in Japan. And he actually mentioned that there was a generation change between like the old school way of doing things in underground culture, like the Yakuza culture, where they used to wear business suits, and then the new school, fucking saggy jeans, tracksuit Yakuza gangsters, right? And
More of a comfortable gangster.
I guess so. A hip hop influence on gangsters, sort of like the Sons of Anarchy, white jean or white shoes and flat brim hat, motorcycle culture. You know what I mean?
Sounds nice.
Yeah. Well, it's a different element, right? So I think that's very interesting. Where we're going when subculture becomes main culture, or when there's crossover between underground cultures. Because, like, you got to admit, like, when I was young, I wasn't gonna have a motorcycle. What's my subculture? You know what I mean? So, in a lot of ways, when you put on a leather vest or, you know, a pair of boots and you hop on a bike, you're like, oh, you're one of those white outlaw guys, right? As opposed to, you know, putting on sagging jeans and, you know, or, you know, putting on what is it, Dickies shorts and pulling your socks up to your knees with a button-down flannel.
Big fan of that look, by the way.
Yeah, the Cholo style.
Love it.
Yeah, well, then in Southern California, you got the Mongols, right? That's straight up like it's that mesh of like Cholo culture and motorcycle culture smashing together, right? And even that influences like other outlaw organizations where they just kind of do the same thing, like the Dickies outfits with like the Chuck Taylors and all of that. That's all subculture. It's all subculture, and all subculture is sub for a reason. Mainstream culture.
Oh, Pat's hot take on mainstream culture.
It's colonialism. It's fit
Yeah.
into this system, and if you don't fit into this system, you know you're on the outskirts.
But you have said it yourself, you know, like how this outlaw subculture eventually becomes mainstream. That's what dictates it, right?
Yeah.
The outlaws, the fringe, the everybody sees the interest in it or what they want to get out of it, and then it starts to become part of it, and it becomes diluted a little bit. But the ultimate ethos of it is still kind of there and becomes more what we want. And I think, like, I mean, you got city councilors now who grew up skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
That's a
mean?
good point. It's still,
So look at the amount of skate parks in Saskatoon compared to when you were a kid.
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So 0 compared to
There's a bank
one on
behind
every fucking corner now,
a
which is
funeral
amazing.
parlor.
You know, so
Well,
little
we-
stuff like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's still they still have to wear a suit when they're going to work, and they're still doing the thing. But it's again that gradual generational change of I grew up with it, so now I don't have
Well,
to make
you
an
know-
outlaw, and we can be a little more flexible.
I call the suit the colonial uniform.
Sure.
Right? Well, think about it. Like, it's been forever that people have had to wear this, like, proper fitting, you know, you got your noose around your neck and you got this buttoned in. You're
It's a
ready
very
for,
poorly functioning jacket. Doesn't
Yeah,
do all the-
uncomfortable.
Hardly works as a jacket.
you're prepared for the coffin.
You're made for inside also. You can't wear them out in the fucking rain or weather.
Oh,
or
you need an
nothing.
overcoat and
No.
all that, you know, your little rubber on top of
Very
your shoes.
impractical.
See, and it's weird because the new model is, even in schools, it's like casual. We sit in a circle, you know what I mean? Or you sit on a beanbag chair, you work where you work, you know? And I think that's the change of society. But then also it comes into play where people talk about traditional family values. And I'm like, well, which are those family values? You know, like the male on top earning the money, the wife's, you know, that Mad Men kind of attitude. Is it? Do we want traditional family values, or just those people that benefited from that dynamic? They want to keep those values. So it makes me wonder in a lot of ways. I think that you know, as gender changes, as culture changes, as the underground becomes mainstream, well, is being conservative going to go underground? You know what I mean?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think it's cyclical because if there's value in that, then that's going to surface again. You know what I mean? But if it's not, it's going to go the fucking way of
Tasmanian Devil T-shirts from fucking
Beer wolf
1993.
pants.
You know what I mean? Yeah, nobody's rocking them shits anymore, and that's fine.
Well, there's still those people that are. When I was a skater. Well, for real, like.
I hope they're doing it ironically.
No, this is
Jesus.
fucking, this is Saskatoon. They're kicking around, those guys that will look like the guy from Rex Kwon Do and, the Napoleon Dynamite. Those guys are real. They're rocking those pants, beer wolf pants I used to call them. And like, there's some dude with a mullet and a mustache rocking around with a midriff sweater t-shirt cut off, lifting, doing his bench presses.
Fucking rocks, I bet. Hey,
Oh,
he's got
man.
an eye rock.
Oh, fucking right.
Yeah. I'm on board.
It's funny. It's super cool if it's ironic, but it's just scary if it's not. And that's always interesting when people. I like to think that people like to glorify the generation that came like 30 years before them. When I was young, the 70s came back in. The generation you're born in almost by the time. Like,
the 90s are now the 70s.
right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Grunge is trending because it's ironic. I'm
Yeah.
into ironic grunge and I think
Ironic
that's-
plaid.
Yeah.
Yeah, more power on you.
Bring back Doc Martens. I'm like, they were out? I didn't know, like, really. So, it's kind of strange. And I see it with tattooing, too. I'm just waiting till tribal comes back in. I cut my teeth on tribal armbands. I can knock that shit off like
I
it's going
just
out
had
of
a
style.
fucking conversation. I don't even want to out them about a tribal armband recently.
They want one, send them to me.
No, like they had like a lower arm tattoo and then a tribal armband up here, and that was it. And they're just like, I don't know what I did there. I don't know why I did that exactly. And I wish there was some way to undo it. But I'm like, lean into it. I'd fucking take that thing all the way around. Maybe drag it up onto your neck a bit.
Oh, 100%. Do the
People
George
know what's
Clooney from Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, fucking right.
Well, and I see that
Great
in like,
flick.
well, trending, right? Like, I see these trends of tattooing happening, right? Where there was a period of time tribal was big because you could get something big and huge and cover lots of your body and you weren't committing to any real idea. It was just like it's
Looks
design.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's badass. I have a tattoo. And then the sailor kind of stuff came in, the traditional American. Yeah, we're all right. And then the old school traditional trad am stuff came in, and then there was for a brief period of time, very brief, anime hookups. That kind of like anime style got popular. Now I don't know, man. There's so many trends that come in. Like right now, what I notice is weird hipster dots and lines on fingers and geometric triangles.
Shit looks like pick and poke, but it ain't pick and poke.
Yeah, well, there's those people that are doing that shit, and like apprentices that go off and start a shop, and that's all they do, and they're making a living for them. So more power to them. I won't really consider it tattooing, but like. So it's weird. What tramp stamps is one that really fucking. I used to call them lower back tattoos. You want a lower back tattoo? I had a way for them to sit. Nothing needed to be exposed. Quick little easy tattoo. There you go. Thank you for my job. And then somebody came along and called it a tramp stamp. And now nobody wants it because they're not a tramp, for Christ's sake. So now they just get them under their tits.
Yep.
Yeah. Now the tramp stamp has moved from your ass cheeks to your boobs. And the under boob tattoo is the new tramp stamp, but it hasn't been called that. I should come up with some witty name to make fun of that, and then nobody will get those. But I don't mind doing them, so it's okay. Yeah. I don't mind that. Just like I didn't mind the lower back.
Shoot yourself in the foot here.
Well, it's weird. The moms have the tramp stamps and the daughters have the under boob tattoos. I just wait till spider webs on the nipples are popular or some shit like that.
Jesus Christ, that's a whole nother level.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Don't get me going. I've tattooed people's slaves. Like dominatrix brings her slave to me to get tattooed, and he's got her name and her like flowers and a lock around his stuff. Like there's some intimate tattoos that happen, and if you're a professional, you just don't give a shit. You just do your job. But I guess that's counterculture still. Wait till everybody's getting locks around their dicks.
Yep. I'm on board.
It's trending.
Summer 2020.
Yeah.
Locks on cocks.
Let's bring it.
Cock lock.
Let's bring it out. So we got some social media set up for us. We got a Facebook group. Or?
Yes, we got a Facebook page, we got an Instagram thing, we got a YouTube channel, and like we're gonna try and get some content up and just get some shit out there so you guys get something to listen to and look at, and kind of keep you informed as to when we're doing other ones. And yeah, I would love if anybody's gonna comment on anything. If you're in the Saskatoon area, who the fuck would you love to see come down here and just hang out for an hour? because I already got a bunch of ideas, but I'd like to know what other people think also. Just because I don't know, I don't have that many ideas, I guess.
Well, I got lots of friends that I
Yeah.
could bring down. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But like, what do? You know, you're just a guy with interesting opinions.
That's all I
My
want.
buddy Joe.
The man on the street segment. Yeah.
The man on the street.
Yeah. No.
Our buddy Seasick that painted my Trespassers Will Be Prostituted and a lot of other motorcycles and pinstriping and airbrushing and
Yeah.
fabricating in town. I'd like to get him down here, shoot the shit.
I think we were talking about Seasick a little bit, and I think he's someone who is very. A lot of people don't really get to know him. You know, like if you know his work, and a lot of people have seen it and don't even realize that's what they're saying. Like there's lots of these huge murals here in Saskatoon that he's, you know,
Or Decay,
integral.
Danny.
And Decay, absolutely, like integral members of those crews that are making that happen. That you guys are driving by all the time on your way to work. Or
Yeah,
pick
you
your
did
kids
that.
up.
You did that.
That's it, right?
Uh-huh. So
So, yeah.
I'd like to get those guys down. Yeah, all of them. Well,
Yeah.
fucking Decay. He's like part of car clubs from California. And he's been doing like striping and painting, and all these guys are graffiti guys.
I wouldn't
Good,
care to
you know?
not be in a room with him, though. I don't.
Yeah, I know.
No,
He gets
I
some
like-
great reviews
Oh,
on his
shut
water
up.
on his car wash.
We're only going to talk car wash. I know you're an incredibly talented artist, but let's talk car wash.
All the guys you tell them that their
Yeah.
rides are
Yeah.
shitty in your car wash. Get the fuck out of here! You can't dry your car like that. Get your
a
shitty
little
truck
shock
out of
talk
here. Yelp
Well, you know
reviews.
what? And one other, I think I'd like to get Sean Cuthan on here. I think
Oh,
he'd be a
fuck
fun guy
yeah.
to talk to.
Yeah.
We talk about his stand-up
Oh my
career and what
God.
he's doing. And I know I saw a thing. They're trying to do a like a stand-up in your backyard kind of thing, like a fireside thing. You know, you pay these stand-ups and they'll come in and do a thing with you and 10 of your friends or whatever. And I know Sean was kind of part of that, so
Yes.
kind of cool to hear about that. So
He was funny as fuck, and I didn't know. I just knew him from the hardcore scene, putting on gigs and shit
Yeah.
like that. I'm like, oh,
No,
he put on
I've
some really cool shows.
personally never seen him be funny. I would know.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. right?
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's why. I
Make
like
me
to-
laugh, motherfucker.
Yeah, this is some new shit. We want that new shit, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I would like to. Yeah,
I never even considered that. Yeah, I always think subculture stuff, but there's also guys that are really making a go out of, like, you know,
Yeah.
comedy.
you know, they're doing it. Doing it.
All right, so that's that.
I think so, eh?
All right,
Before it peters out. And
Peter's out.
Shuts off.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
Blow your load too quick.
right,
Love you
Peters.
too.
I love
Oh, we're not social distancing.
you. I touch every chance.
Thanks,
I get.
Russ. I really appreciate your help down here.
No problem.